Hey guys, welcome to Adobe Live this morning. It is Thursday. I forgot the date, November 19th. Happy Thursday. Hope you're ready to start. I've got my hot berry water this morning. I've got tea. You know how it is with getting started in Adobe Live. We got to have the essentials on deck, and I hope you do as well. Thank you for joining me for part 2 of my exploration of perspective drawing in Adobe Fresco. That's how we're getting started today. I'm Spencer Nugent. Some people call me Sketch-A-Day. I'm online. I'm easy to find. I'm a product designer, so I do this full time, producing concepts and illustrations and solving real problems for my clients. And Adobe products are essential to what I do. So we're going to be diving into Adobe Fresco today, and I'm going to kick things off. If you missed last time, be sure to check it out, but I'll give you a quick overview of the Fresco interface and also hit some things I probably missed yesterday. If you have any questions at all, be sure to ask me, please. I love your input and feedback as well. We're going to be finishing up our automotive car drawing, as well as doing a little bit of architecture and taking requests from you. So any questions you have, feel free to ask. We're going to get started and get rolling. So let's go. All right. With that, I'm going to kick things off here. Hope I'm not clipping too much on the audio. My apologies. Live in Technicolor, absolutely. Hello, everyone in the chat. Oh, I should mention, if you want to share some of your work, you can do that in the Photoshop Discord, bit.ly/psdiscord. There's also a Google Drive link to yesterday's PSD file. So if you want to see what I did, you can download that. And I forgot to upload the brushes, so I'll share some of those after the stream, and you guys can check that out and play with them yourself. It'll be pretty awesome. So hopefully you're all doing well, happy, healthy, and staying safe. I know it's kind of crazy out there, so for many people, and I hope that creativity, like it has for me, has helped you weather this experience. And I love how these opportunities bring us all together. Okay, so let's switch over here. This is what we worked on yesterday. We did a sketch of an automotive concept, and I'm going to show you some shortcuts for doing this. Sometimes when you do it this way, it can lead to somewhat stiff, when I say stiff, I mean rigid feeling concepts, not necessarily having as much life. So I'm going to show you some different ways and approaches to drawing this. We'll add some color, and then I'm going to do an automotive design sketch as well. I think Tim can drop the link in the chat for you guys for this file from yesterday. All right, so just real quick, when you do open Adobe Fresco for the first time, you are going to be presented with this window. I have all my PSD cloud files stored here, and that's one of the awesome things about Adobe Creative Cloud, is that all your files will sync across your apps. So if you're working with PSDC files, or if you happen to be working in Illustrator on iPad as well, you can now save an AIC file, or Adobe Illustrator Cloud file, or PSD cloud file. Pretty awesome. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to pull up Photoshop today, but I do want to mention that when you do pull up Photoshop on your desktop, all the files you see here on the iPad that you see on my screen, well, if you're working with your files, will show up on your desktop. Hello, Latrice, Chell, and Aisa, Nudge. Hello, everyone. Thank you for saying hello. Good morning. Okay, so this is the general interface. If you want to create a new document, all of that's at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and open my recent file. This all happens over the cloud, so you will need an internet connection unless the file is also archived locally. So like I mentioned yesterday, we did go over some perspective drawing. I'm just going to turn off some layers here and turn on a few layers so we can review real quick what we did. So we talked about 2-point perspective, being able to take a somewhat structured step-by-step approach to making things a little simpler. Just a reminder, I will be paying attention to the behance.net/live chat. That's where I'll be watching. If you have questions or you want to ask me something specifically, you can't look at it all, right? 4 screens is enough. All right. So we did 2-point perspective. We also looked at 3-point perspective. Okay, and perspective really is just a way for us to interpret what we see in real life in a 2-dimensional medium, like a piece of paper or this screen. It's 2-dimensional, right? It doesn't have volume like my handy cube here. So remember, 1-point perspective is like you're looking at the face of this cube. Okay, 2 point, the cube is now rotated. This was really hard to do yesterday. And 3 point is if the point is the closest thing to you right there in terms of relative position. And that's how we describe, or how I describe, 3 point, 2 point, and 1 point perspective. Mike says he's still waiting for wheels to drive his couch around. That would be interesting. I was teaching at a college once, and some students had hacked together a couch with wheels, and it was pretty amazing. Okay, so we also did this drawing of a truck, and I'll come back to the interface in just a sec. We did this drawing, right, step by step, and as I often say on my own YouTube, when in doubt, rough it out, work light till you get it right. Make drawing easy for yourself by taking out some of the stress. Okay, coming from a math background like myself, I've had to teach myself rather, ways to simplify things. So that's what I'm all about when it comes to drawing. Simplify and getting your ideas down as quickly as you can, because ideas are fleeting. They kind of come and they go, you know, like some people in real life. All right, so this was our rough sketch. Okay, had a little bit more life than the final sketch. So again, as I mentioned, sometimes your sketches can feel a little deflated or rigid, even when you do this structured approach, but it does help you understand how to draw a little bit better. Okay, so 30-second hit on the interface. On the left side of the screen, we're gonna have, well, I guess left is, yeah, right there. We're going to have all our brushes, transform controls, colors, and so forth. On the other side of the screen, you're going to have your layers, layer adjustments, and a few other settings like clipping masks if you really like that, being able to turn your layers on and off. And then at the top right of the screen, we have some settings. I do have a touch indicator on the screen, so if you see that blue circle, it just means that's where my finger or the Apple Pencil happens to be. I'm using an iPad Pro 12.9-inch version for those who are curious, but Adobe Fresco does work on other devices like the Wacom Mobile Studio Pro product, as well as Microsoft Surface Pro as well. Okay, so just by way of information there. All right, so I'm gonna leave this document intact, and let's go ahead and create a new document. So let's hit tabloid here. And I've kind of, I want to make sure I capture the design that I had before. So I'm going to show you something you can do in Fresco, particularly if you want to have something for reference, for example. So I'm going to go and hit this share button at the top right of the screen right there. Hit that share button. And I have options. I can send this file to Illustrator if I want on the iPad, or edit on the desktop. I can export real quick, or share a link to collaborate and add comments and that kind of thing. But I'm going to hit quick export, and let's go with copy. Okay, and now I'm going to go back to my new document here, and I should be able to paste. Let's see. I always forget this one because I don't do it too often. Here we go. So I'm going to tap on a layer and then hit, let's see, paste from clipboard. So that's going to bring in that image that I just had. Cool. So now I have my image, and I can scale this down. Okay, let's just place it, hit done. Now, one thing you need to know when you do import an image into Fresco, it'll actually try and preserve that image as a reference. So I can rescale this if I want to, for example, and it doesn't degrade the image. But when I'm ready to actually place that image, if I tap on the layer, the second to last command, convert to pixel layer, I'm going to hit that, okay? And now I'm able to erase and manipulate and do whatever I want. Had I not done that, okay, I can't erase. It's going to ask me to convert that to an image layer. So just something to be aware of if you're doing like a copy and paste command on an image that you exported or shared and wanted to get into Adobe Fresco. All right, so you can hit convert there as well. All right, so like I said, we did kind of a structured, calculated, measured approach to this perspective drawing. But we can also take some shortcuts. Now remember, thank you, Tim. Remember, perspective, there's just a few things, not just a few things, but there are a few helps here. All right, closer is going to be bigger. All right, it's going to be bigger. We're going to have more saturation, and more detail. All right, and then far is going to be small or smaller, less saturation and color, and less detail. Okay, so if you keep those things in mind, then it's somewhat easy, or it rather makes it a little bit easier to understand how to approach things in perspective. If you're trying to draw something and you put it down on the canvas and you go, that feels funny. Ask yourself, is it too saturated? Is it too big? Do I have the right convergence on my vanishing lines, as I like to call them? Okay, all right. So let's show you. Let me turn this layer back on actually for reference. I'm going to create a new layer, and I am using the default pencil brush in Fresco. The default brushes are great. Yesterday we used some of my custom brushes that I've made for the app as a designer that I like to use when I'm sketching products and concepts. And I'm going to share just a couple of those with you. And if you want the expanded set, just hit me up later. Okay, so let's go with this method, which is I'm going to start with just drawing a reference shape, something to put down on the paper here. And the idea here is that as I'm drawing these shapes, I'm imagining in my head some sort of perspective box in which I might find this vehicle. Okay, something like that, for example, or in this case, perhaps something like this. Okay, so just a quick way to add that reference. If you wanted to even do the boxes, you could, and then I could throw some wheels on, like so, maybe a little bit lower since it is a Jeep. Okay, we could do something like that and just block it in. And that gives us the beginning of our shape. Now remember, yesterday we also warmed up a little bit, drawing straight lines, circles, and so forth. You can absolutely do that as well if you like. But having this gray slash black line here actually helps me at least have some placement for where on the page I want this vehicle to appear, for example. Okay, and just makes it so much easier to then go about drawing the concept. For example, just nice and rough like so, and I believe it was something like this. So that's one way to go about making this a bit easier. Now I'm going to keep these sketches that I created just as reference. We'll do overlays again, and today we're going to add some color, talk a little bit about reflections, and so forth. All right, so let's go ahead and turn off my layer now, and we can move the objects on the layer by just hitting the transform command. That's the arrow with the little plus sign. Okay, so I'm going to hit transform. Now I can move this over, we can scale it down, and I have two concepts all ready to go in terms of my perspective. Now again, remember, things that are closer to us are going to be bigger with more saturation and detail. Things that are further away are going to be smaller with less saturation and detail. Okay. So another way to do this, like I said, little ellipse here, and if you don't want to sketch the box in, that's totally fine. Sometimes what I like to do is just start with drawing ellipses, for example, for these wheels. Maybe a couple hard points for my wheel wells, like so. And if you guys have any requests for products around your environment that you'd like to see, we can do that. Otherwise, I'm going to do an architectural sketch after we finish up this round of cars. But again, this method just gives me a place on my, I'm used to saying paper because I do draw on paper quite a bit, but on my canvas here gives me some reference that I can work with. Okay, I think the headlights were a little different, so I'm going to make sure I capture that. And there we go, just like that, nice and rough. When in doubt, rough it out. And I think we had some funky rims, if I recall correctly. All right, so getting started nice and easy with some rough sketches right there. Okay, so let's say we want to make this sketch our main sketch, for example, or our main concept. Tap on the layer, slide the opacity down. You know the drill if you watched yesterday. And now I'm going to pick a different brush because I have enough information on the canvas now that I can just jump into sketching. Let's try a different pencil today, or sorry, brush. I'm going to use this pencil that I created. It's a little bit rough on the edges. All right, and let's make sure we're on the right layer. I do tend to work in a non-destructive way when possible, and that's because you never know when a client or someone you're working with is going to want to see something different or make a change or modify, that kind of thing. So that's why I tend to create lots of layers. I'm not super organized, but if you want to get organized, you can put your layers in a group as well. When in doubt, do freak out, says Tim. I think it goes something like that. I think so. All right. So nice ellipse here. All right, and let's do another one over here. And so this is a process of redrawing or resketching. I'm trying to put brand new lines down where possible. Okay. And just use what we did before as a guide. Okay. So I'm just going to simplify these headlights a bit from our initial concept that we had. All right, maybe add some sort of detail on the front here. Keep it nice and quick and loose, and then we'll add some color, talk about reflections a bit and how I like to shade things. All right, I do fancy myself more of a line artist when it comes to my drawing. So lines are super important to me, even though, as it turns out, they don't exist in real life. A line is merely an expression of the limit of what you can see on an object. Okay, it's actually quite a game changer when you realize that, and helps you better know and address how to use your lines. Okay, let's go ahead and finish up here on our body side, just nice and quick, like so. All right, so you may not love drawing Jeeps and trucks, and that's okay, but the techniques here you can use for a variety of things as a product designer, or even if you're just trying to illustrate something. Okay, I'm gonna add a little something in here on the side, and now let's finish up the rest of our profile. A little bit of a tip on line weight. So lines don't exist. Line weight is a way that we express line weight is a way that we express proximity and placement when it comes to shapes. Reverb's asking, why not just do this to begin with? Well, part of it is about teaching yourself. If you're just starting, if you're just getting started, teaching yourself the basics so that you can know how to run. It's like you learn to walk before you run. So I do like to teach the why before the how. Okay, and part of knowing the why is doing that frustrating, annoying sometimes perspective drawing. Okay, and then you can kind of break the rules when you know what the rules are and still maintain and have a great drawing. So that's why I do it this way, or why we did it that way yesterday rather. All right, so let's go ahead and get this rim in here. I'm thinking of somewhat of a curved surface, so it's going to be a little tricky to draw here. But again, the brush engine in Fresco is just amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I love that, you know, if I'm working in Fresco on my iPad here and I want to continue my work on my desktop, I can do that by just opening the PSD-C file, and as long as my brushes are added to a Creative Cloud library, maybe there's a little logo there, as long as they're added to a Creative Cloud library, okay, they should show up on my desktop or laptop that I'm working on with Adobe Photoshop. So pretty cool that we have that ability to sync your favorite tools that you like to work with. Okay, so here's an example of this wheel being further back, and I'm not as concerned about the detail and presentation of this wheel because it is a bit further back. Now I can take some liberties here in terms of what those details are because of that observation with perspective, that things further away tend to have less detail. Okay, less detail, less saturation. All right, now I do want to sketch in this other wheel, or at least hint at it, so I'm just gonna throw in a little curve right there, and now kind of connect the wheels with some lines like so. All right, this thing's really jacked and lifted for some off-road adventure for sure. All right, so this is enough for me now that if we go ahead and turn off my underlay, we have a nice sketch here that we can work with. Okay, so let's go ahead and move. Okay, select the layer. I'm going to go ahead and move this sketch, maybe scale it up a little bit, and we're going to talk about reflections and lighting. Okay, and how I might go about coloring something like this to then create a concept presentation. All right. I don't speak German, unfortunately, just a little Spanish. We got a little conversation going on in the chat today as well. Okay. Let me add just a couple more lines here. I do want to hint at a bit of the inside of the vehicle. And again, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to hit me up in the Behance chat, and that's behance.net/live. All right, so here's our quick sketch for concept. These lines I'm throwing in here are meant to give me some reference when I will be shading in the surfaces on my design. Okay, so that really thin light line there. This one I'll probably ignore. That was just a reference line from front to back. So we can erase a bit of that, like so. But I do need to think about as well, okay, what's actually happening here? You know, how much does that go in? Maybe it does have a line that fades out, for example. So all things we can do, meaning that plane or surface is moving in that direction. Now we're moving down like so, out like so, and then down. This one, if I were to draw an arrow, might go something like that, and then out. Okay, and that's kind of how I'm thinking about these surfaces. And it's important because it's going to determine how I add color and how I show shape on this design. Okay. Reminder, if you want to undo, just like I just did, 2-finger tap on the screen, really easy, and you'll be able to undo. 3-finger tap allows you to redo. Okay, so new layer, and I want to show you something. Okay, so if I have a plane is just, think of it like a stiff, flat piece of paper, cardboard, or something like that. Okay, so if I have 2 pieces of cardboard and I orient them in a way like this, okay, let's say we have a light bulb. Might not look like a light bulb, but trust me, it's a light bulb. We have a light bulb that's projecting some light. Could be a window as well. Okay, light's going to hit this plane. It's going to hit that surface. If you take a minute, look around the room you're in, chances are, if you're not completely in darkness, because even your computer screen counts, your phone screen, you'll notice that light doesn't hit that surface evenly. Okay, that's just the nature of things. So we may have a bright spot on the surface here, but more importantly, light's going to travel from my bulb and do something amazing. It's going to hit this bottom surface that this other vertical surface is on and reflect back, okay, onto the plane. Well, what does that mean for color? I'll show you in just a sec. Similarly, if I have a curved surface like so, okay, so if I'm looking at this from the side, okay, as opposed to the front, we're going to look at it in both ways. We're going to observe from the side, I've got something like this. Okay, this is our ground, and I'm also looking at it this way. Okay, so that's what we're looking at here. Hopefully that makes sense. In any case, because this is curved up, okay, because it's curved up, there's going to be like clouds up here and mountains or whatever if this is an outdoor environment. So a lot of times what you'll see in curved surfaces like this is you'll see those reflections happening. Okay, you'll see those clouds, and you'll get dark blue. We're gonna do this on our vehicle, don't worry, and that's gonna go down to a light blue. All right, and these are all things you can observe in real life when looking at something like a car that is shiny or anything else that's shiny, really. One of my favorite things to do when I'm in Chicago, actually, you know, in another reality when people were traveling, is to visit Millennial Park and see the bean, as it's called. I'm not sure if that's the official name, but you can check it out. It's this giant chrome object, and it's amazing to look at the reflections and see and just learn, connect the dots, if you will, between how you draw and what you see. So down here now, you might get things like ground, surfaces, and colors, tones, textures. If there's lines in a road and fence or something, right, you're going to get those reflections happening from the ground. So typically there's a split of cool and warm right there. Okay, typically that's what happens. All right, so I'm going to leave that note. Again, this file will be uploaded so you can check it out, you can get these notes and try for yourself. It's going to be awesome. All right, so back to our vehicle here now. If I were coloring this, what would I do? Well, I like to make these processes easy for me, and so one of the things I like to do is just fill this with a solid color. Okay, so let's say we want to make this, I guess I'll ask you guys. What color should I make this? In the meantime, let's go ahead and color the wheels. Let's see what color you guys want to see. So for the wheels, I'm going to pick some gray here, and let's go ahead and jump to, I've got a few awesome brushes. I'm going to use this marker brush and just go ahead and shade this in like so. And this brush I like because it is pressure sensitive. All right, it's pressure sensitive, but you also get a nice buildup with the brush. So working with a mid-tone allows me to go a little bit darker or lighter wherever I need to. Okay, and we're going to keep this a bit sketchy so we can move on to doing some more perspective drawing and show you guys some other stuff here. All right, we got blue, we got violet. 2 votes so far. I guess those are in a similar color range, so how about blue violet? How about blue violet? Now I'm going to shade in my shadow here as well. So work light until you get it right. Easy to remember. It rhymes. Light till you get it right. That's how we're going to do things. Okay. So working light, like I said, this is your color wheel. So when you tap that little circle, electric blue, blue, Rufus red, high rolling, awesome. When you tap that little circle on the left side of the screen, it's going to pull up your color picker. So you can use the traditional color wheel, pick colors. You can sample colors as well on the layer you're working on by just tapping and holding. A little loop will show up, and I can move this around and sample colors. Right now everything's black and white, so this isn't particularly fun and interesting, but it'll become more important as we continue to work here. So let's go with electric blue. I assume this is electric blue. I'm not sure exactly what electric blue is, but I'm imagining something like this. Okay, so on a new layer, I'm going to, and typically for each color, I do sample, or rather create a new layer, typically. Or if I need to obscure something. So in this case, let's just make a little outline of the whole vehicle right there, all on a different layer, again, because sometimes you may work with a client and they say, you know what, electric blue isn't working for me. Can you do this? Can you do this in a fuchsia? And you don't want to be in a situation where you're pulling your hair out. All right, so now that I've created that outline, I've selected the paint bucket tool. It's the one that looks like a bucket that's tipping over. You should be able to recognize that from Photoshop if you've ever used Photoshop. Again, love the integration here and the thought. Tap on the layer, and now we have it filled with a color. All right, so let's go ahead, clean up on the outline. There is a little thing here where when you do fill, you do kind of have to come around and clean up. If it doesn't bug you, not a big deal, don't worry about it. If it does bug you, I feel you. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do now is take an airbrush. Okay, so I can take like the soft round opacity brush, or if you've made your own brush, and I'm going to give this vehicle some depth, just some general depth shading here. All right, without getting into the weeds. If you want me to explain it, I will in terms of lighting, or I can point you in the direction of a few resources if you guys hit me up after the stream. All right, so now I'm going to take this brush and let's go ahead. Whoops, that's a little too big. Let's reduce the size here. All right, little check on the size, a little bit bigger. All right, so now I'm going to just shade down the middle like so, and the side of the vehicle like so, maybe a little bit around the back. All right, so we kind of have a natural light spot that's formed. So we've gone from 2D to kind of 3D. All right, 2D to kind of 3D. And at this point, what I like to do is you can go back to your black brush or something that's a bit darker, for example. And I'm just going to pick this marker brush. And let's just go ahead and block in some things. Okay, a little bit more care and precision, for example, if this were meant to be a final or presentation sketch, as we call it in design parlance. A little bit more care would allow us to have a cleaner presentation, but I'm just trying to move quickly here. All right, so now I'm going to shade in on the inside like so as well for my windshield. Okay, and now it's starting to come together. All right, I like doing the blue over everything, or the car color, because it gives a bit of richness to the grays in particular when you do use a translucent brush or you set your blending mode to multiply. Okay, so that's another thing you can do. All right, so now I'm going to work on highlights, reflections, and some toning on this design as well. I haven't really finished the wheels yet either. It could take a while to scrape the paint off the windows, says Reverb Mike. That's true. Absolutely true. Okay, so let's keep moving quickly here. And like I mentioned, I'll zoom in and show you, this brush in particular has that buildup to it. So if I come in, right, I can get some nice tone happening, or if I want to feather out my stroke for some reason, you can do that as well. Cleanup is easy because we are on a layer by itself. I can just erase what I want without affecting the rest of the sketch. So again, if you're looking for a higher level of precision, try to zoom in, erase where you need to. I'm using a nice hard crisp eraser here, and that will allow you to get a more definitive shape, if you will. Okay, and we could do that on, say, the outline here, for example, as well. All right, pretty straightforward. Cool. If you're looking for an even more painterly look when it comes to your drawings, like I said, I'm more of a line artist, but you can tap on the layer, lower the opacity of that sketch, and continue to work and increase the fidelity of your colors as you go. But for me, the lines kind of hold it together, so I like to just work quickly and have those. In terms of layer order, however, one thing I hope you notice here, I'll go ahead and turn this off so you can see. Oops, wrong command there. So when I remove the lines, this is really what we have. We're just able to work very quickly. Okay, and when you turn the lines on, there it is. Boom. Whoa, the brain is a funny thing and how it works when you see a bit of definition in your sketch. But in the interest of saving time and working quickly, this is just how I like to do it as a product designer sketching concepts. And again, if you're just getting started with Fresco or Photoshop or any drawing app, period, this is just a great way to take some of the stress out of it and make it easier for yourself. All right, so the top layer is my sketch, and then typically I'll put my colors below that layer. So again, if I need to change something, I can make a selection here. Let's see. Or lock transparency. Either way, change the color, that kind of thing. If I need to move it into Photoshop, add a texture, or do anything like that, I can do that as well. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. Okay, so now I'm going to make a new layer, and let's do some sky tones. So for sky tones, I'm going to do just a nice light blue. And let's go back to my marker brush here. And so anything that's facing up, okay, I want to make sure I'm capturing those sky tones. Just for purposes of illustration here, let's show you kind of what I mean. So if I were to use a imaginary laser knife and cut through this vehicle, it might look something like this. Okay, we might get what's called a section, something like this. Okay, if I were to take my imaginary laser knife. What's important here is these lines, okay, that I'm drawing. They kind of tell me the direction. This is on a new layer, okay. They kind of tell me the direction of what's happening. So I'm able to determine how much light to put on these surfaces, okay? You don't have to do this as you're drawing, but it's just something to, I think, mentally be aware of if you are creating an illustration and adding light. And this could really be anything. In this case, it's a car, but it really could be anything. You know, it's interesting you say that, Mike. As fun as drawing should be, it really shouldn't be stressful. I've had many times in my career where I've imposed stress on my process out of fear or just concern or anything like that. And you're right, it shouldn't be stressful. But those times where I allow that to happen are some of the most frustrating and, frankly, the times where I don't do my best work. So, okay, so like I said, I'm now going to take this marker brush, and you could use an airbrush, anything you want. I'm just going to use this brush, and we can always play with the opacity of these layers, but I just want to add some white here to anything that is facing upward, and also being cognizant and aware of what might be receiving what's called reflected light. So reflected light is going to be light in your environment. It could be, you know, a secondary light source, say a lamp, or you know, in this infinite environment this vehicle is in, it could be just some of that additional white. And now we're going to add that. And let's do some cleanup on the edges where we need. So we're going to clean up and soften. Okay, so let's clean up, okay, just to make sure this is all nice and crisp. Just like so. We'll get back to the wheels and clean that up as well. And now we can just kind of adjust the opacity, right? If it's too much, we can push that down like so. Now let's get some reflections. So that was our highlights. Let's get some reflections in place here. And I'm going to go back, make sure I'm on that basic marker. Let's select a black, but I'm going to do like a warm, slightly warm black here. And now, just trying to think of what might be reflected into this vehicle and where those reflections might be happening. Okay. And you kind of have to use your imagination here and just think, okay, what could be, well, imagination and experience, but what could be near this thing? And what might it be reflecting? So it's a bit of reflection and shadow here at play, but we'll do the same thing, modify our opacity, play with the brush size, get our little details in here. And maybe there's like a mountain or something. This is an outdoor vehicle after all that we want to get reflected in here. A little bit bigger on this brush for some tone on the side. And we'll come back and make some of this a bit more intense as we go. By intense, I mean crisp. Okay, but right now we're just taking some initial steps to giving this some shade and shape. Okay, so now I can play with the opacity again. If I want to play with it globally, right, just play with that slider. I said play a lot. Adjust that slider and your opacity will be reduced. Okay, so once you're in a good spot there. And now, with another new layer, I'm going to switch to, let's see, I'm going to use this inker brush. it's called. It's just a nice crisp brush that I have in my set. Okay, and again, I'm going to imagine what the horizon might look like as it's compressed into certain spots on the vehicle. Get these edges in. It's really hard to do this if you don't do observational drawing. So, as I said yesterday, draw from observation and also draw from imagination. Okay. A normal drawing like this might take a few hours actually. So even, and when I say like this, I don't mean to this quality or level, but rather taking the time to go beyond this may require a few hours. So if you're interested in that, again, you can zoom in, work on those details, and get the fidelity that you're after. Okay. I wonder how many car drawings have been done on Adobe Live. I'm guessing not many. I'm guessing not many. Okay. I'm going to also change the blending mode to multiply here. And okay, we can work on this just a little bit more. Couple lines here and there. All right, it doesn't have to be just dark lines either. Sometimes with cars, you're gonna get a bit of white reflected in as well. So lightest lights against darkest darks. Contrast is your friend. All right, and that's gonna help things feel a bit more realistic. All right. Let's add some reflected light on the sides here. Again, if we have some additional light source or perhaps are picking up a bit of reflection from somewhere else, maybe these are headlights. Right there. But not bad for a quick sketch. Not bad for a quick sketch. Okay, I do want to add some contrast to the wheels. Make these a little bit darker. Up our size on our brush. And let's see. Okay, so this is where it gets a little tricky. And I do the game of, okay, let's turn lights off. Or sorry, layers off and layers on. And see what's where. But I was able to identify. What I mean is you can turn the layer on or off like so. All right. So let's go ahead now. Make some of this a little darker, like I said, because it is a wheel. They're black, right? Or very dark gray, if not black. Now contrast is certainly going to help. Just block in and hint at perhaps some form of suspension there. We'll add some light to this as well as we go. Working with the shadows like this also gives you an opportunity to obscure potentially mechanical things that just might be a bit, hard to draw, or if you don't know exactly, you can just add a little bit of darkness there. Cover it up like so, and now we're finally using a full black, and I'll do some blending and shadow on these wheels. Okay, just like so. So remember, work light until you get it right. The wheel itself, I'll just use the same brush here. Let's get our rim done up a bit, and because it is pressure sensitive, I don't really have to change the color here. I can kind of work with it, make it feel a little shiny. Let's get a big version of it here, just kind of tone a little bit, and add shadows where we need to. So shadows, again, contrast, those are things that are going to help your drawings feel more 3D. One of the questions I get quite a bit as I teach drawing is, how do you know when to quit? How do you know when you've done enough? It kind of just comes with experience. And you have to decide, what am I trying to communicate here as a designer or illustrator? What's my intent? Am I intent on photorealism, which is a fine pursuit? Or am I merely trying to communicate that concept? I'm going to clean up a little bit of this blue here, and then we'll touch up the wheel well, and we should be in a fairly good spot. Okay. Should be in a good spot here. Now a little bit of white on the tops of the wheels, like so. Maybe kind of hit some of these tread marks that I implied. Okay. Nice and loose. Again, further back I can keep it even looser. By looser I mean less definition, more expression. Tight would be more definition, less expression. Okay, you can kind of think of it that way. I also want to add a highlight to my windshield. I'm going to go to the very top here, add a layer, and now I can kind of add a highlight on the whole thing on the top. Okay. If I want to lessen the impact of that, we can just erase a little bit. So soft round opacity brush and erase. Now I neglected to show you guys one thing here. You're probably wondering, how is he moving so quick? I neglected to show you one thing. So if you go into your brushes, there's an option for you to create option for you to create your favorites. So when I tap on my brushes here, let's tap again. Okay, I have all or favorites. These are my own brushes, but there's some favorites. So if I want to add, for example, this basic marker 2 to my favorites, all I have to do is tap the star next to it. And now when I go into my favorites, there it is. So if I've been using it a ton, it's right there. Now there's some things on this I would probably fix and change and redo, but in terms of a quick concept, being able to show some depth and perspective, that's how we go about it, okay? Or how I go about it, rather. I did neglect to shade in this extra wheel saver here. Thanks for the color suggestions, everyone. Much appreciated. I'm going to make this chrome, though. All right, so a little bit of chrome there. Yeah, nice dark spot. And let's take some of this blue. Again, I can just tap the layer, hold my finger on the screen, and now I have a loop that allows me to pick a color from the layer. Pretty awesome. All right, so just like that. And let's take, I really should have added this to my favorites. So now I'm going to go down and add this inker to my favorites because I've been using it for my reflections, things like this. Okay, just like that. So at a distance, you know, if you zoom out, looks pretty tight. Again, one of the things I do try to do when drawing is draw big. If you draw big and slightly shrink your sketch or your illustration, it'll actually look a lot better. A little trick, 2 decades of experience. I'm telling you, it works. I just don't want to go through the trouble of grouping all my layers now. But if you did want to group, tap on a layer, notice it looks a little bit bigger, and I can drag this layer now and drop like so. And just keep doing that. I guess I'll just go ahead and do it. While we talk, intermission, we're hanging out on Adobe Live, getting started in Adobe Fresco. Hope you're having a fantastic day. This is me paying for my sins of not being organized. Slowly but surely grouping these layers together. We're almost done. Boom. Okay, so now they're all grouped together, right? And I can turn that on or off. And let's go ahead and, you know, shrink this one down like so. And I can hit done. It's going to apply that transform. Actually, let's not do that. Let's duplicate this first. So tap on the layer. I'm going to show you a little thing you can do. Duplicate this layer group. I'm going to hide this one. Now I'll shrink this one down like so. Okay. And it just looks that much better on the page. So now I'm going to turn this on hit my selection tool. Let's do a little trick here. I'm going to flip this horizontal. We're going to make it look like we did a ton of work today, even though we didn't. Hit done. Let's rearrange the layer order here. Now I'm going to go in the group, and I want to make some tweaks to the design because, hey, I want to make it look like we did a lot of work. So tap on the layer here, and I swear I thought there was a command to select pixels. I have two versions of Fresco, I should mention. But we can, let's see, I can lock transparency. I'll just do that. And this is what I mean by working in a way that's flexible. So now if I wanted a concept, I think the other color was violet, someone said, for the color. So if I wanted something of a violet color here, or even some tint or whatever, I'm gonna go ahead. Let's pick a brush that I can use, like this nice soft round opacity. And we can start to just tone this thing and get a different color going on the whole thing. Okay, so I've locked transparency, which basically means Fresco will only paint where there's already pixels. Okay, pretty handy. So now we have two drawings on the canvas where I've used, let's see, let's make sure I'm in the right spot here, where I've used the same drawing twice. Okay, so as a product designer, you know, you want to save time, you want to show some different concepts, maybe change some things. Maybe the headlight on this one's a little bit different. Maybe I've got an extra vent under here or intake, right? Or maybe it's the shape of the whole intake that's a little bit different. We can change that. So working really quickly. And now to help with the overall effect of this presentation, what if we just lower the transparency of the sketch in the back just a little bit? Just a little bit, so it actually pulls our other sketch forward. Okay, so again, think of perspective as not only, yeah, it does look like color flip paint, but think of perspective as a way to draw your concept, but also a way to present your concept. Things that are closer are going to be bigger. Things that are further away are going to be smaller. Closer, more detail. And so when you have that larger scale, you do get that detail. When things are further away, lower the saturation, and it'll work. All right. Okay. So now I'm going to go new layer, and I want to do one last thing here. I know I keep saying one last thing, but it's the last thing, I promise. Just to create some separation from the background, I've created a new layer, and I'm going to add a white line to the outside of all this. Let's actually switch to, I'm going to use this lead pencil. All right, just kind of add a little bit of perimeter or rim light to my sketch, like so. Maybe a couple other lines here and there. All right, but again, depending on how much you work on this, you can get as much detail as you want or as little as you want with your sketches. All right, so two concepts using the same sketch, slight differences in detail, color, and finish, but you can work really quickly. What determines which brush or pencil I will use? Sometimes it just depends on the mood and frankly, how I'm feeling. I find that as a product designer, sometimes a certain concept, like if I'm sketching a backpack, again, if you missed my Adobe Max session, check that out. It's got tons of really good information and a 50-page workbook. You can find that just going to adobe.com/max, I think, or max.adobe.com. But it depends on what I'm drawing. If I'm drawing something soft, I might use a pencil. If I'm drawing something harder, like consumer electronics device, I use a more definitive, confident brush. If I'm looking to shade something and add some variable tone to it, then I may use something that is pressure sensitive and responsive, like that marker brush or an airbrush as well. Okay. So again, all these files I've created are going to be available. I'm giving them to you to check out, download, play with if you want. You can check out the brush strokes as well. So I'm going to be uploading those to the Google Drive. Tim posted a link there in the Behance chat, so you can check that out. All right, let's create another document here. I did get a question in between sessions. How do you do architectural drawing? And the theme today is perspective. So let's take a look at doing some perspective drawing. I'm going to go back here and let's pick this fine liner brush. It's just a little thin line brush I have. So with architectural sketching, okay, if you have a big enough canvas, right, we can do a couple things. We can lay down a horizon line. Again, Adobe Fresco does have a ruler if you like and you want to use that. We can use that for straight lines. Or if you want to just warm up and get a straight line freehand, you can do that as well. I tend to do most things freehand myself. All right, so let's say we did want to draw a building, okay, and perhaps an interesting perspective for that building. Well, we can put a vanishing point down on the canvas. You may notice that I rotate the canvas a lot as well, and that is in interest of trying to have the drawing conform to how I draw rather than contorting myself to my tablet and how I'm even positioned. Okay, so now I have a vanishing point there, and we could even put another vanishing point here. Now, you may wonder, hey, I've used other drawing apps. They have perspective grids and drawing tools. Why are we doing this? Well, to draw really well, we have to understand the why so that you can do the how. And if you're constantly using tools and helps, you're not really going to learn. You're not really going to get started. You get stalled. And this is about getting started. Okay, so here's my demo cube again. Let's take a look at our demo cube. And I want to show you some stuff. So 1 point perspective means that the front of the cube or the object or anything we're looking at is parallel to us. 2 point means that now we have an edge that is closest to you. 3 point means that now this point is the closest part of this cube to you, the viewer. In this case, the camera lens. Okay, so 1, 2, 3 point, right? You can kind of think of it that way. So why is that important? Well, for an architectural drawing, I would typically do 2 or 3 point perspective. So let's draw perhaps some really cool beach house, right? Maybe just a nice simple structure. So I'm going to start with a leading edge. Okay, and I've marked the top and bottom, A and B. And from these points, I can draw some lines, okay, like so. And we can go back to our vanishing point 2 as well. Now I get to decide, okay, how far back is this thing? If this is the horizon, right, if this is where the mountains are and all that, my house isn't going to go all the way back there. You know, maybe it's here, because somewhere down the line there may be some other structures and that kind of thing. So something else to think about is estimating distance and how you might go about that. Now I can go across this way and then down like so. We're going to use this as an underlay. Okay, and let's say I want to add a deck. I'm going to go back to my vanishing point 2 and now reference out and draw a line back to that point. Okay, so I'm going to draw some lines out like so, and now from vanishing point 1 like so, maybe like so, because I want to create actually some steps. All right, now I can drop down, and I'll just drop down really low here, and maybe we have some steps. Now it can get really confusing and busy, and you may think, oh my gosh, I can't keep track of all this. But just pay attention to your 2 vanishing points. Okay, whenever you make a change, you can always draw back to that point. So as I do this, just watch. We can drop down, like I said, pick that height, go back to the vanishing point here, like so. And now you can kind of see these steps coming together. All right, just like so, just like that. All right, so like I said, I'll use this as an underlay. And I'll show you a little bit as well of some live brushes. Okay, maybe we have an overhang on this structure. Okay, maybe we have an overhang. So I can use, right, all these lines, find that point. That's the corner of the overhang. I'm gonna go from this point to this point and go whoop, just like that. And now I have my other overhang. Now this is a pretty extreme perspective. Okay, it's a pretty extreme perspective, but it is dynamic. It's interesting. It's architectural. All right, maybe it's some sort of modern glass beach house structure. Okay, we can show a little bit of the inside there. And so you can use these points, okay, to kind of estimate your perspective in your drawing. Now, most of the time, I don't sit there and draw between vanishing points. It's a lot of work. It takes time. So even in a drawing like this, as I'm freehanding here, I'm not exactly going back to the vanishing point. I'm just trying to estimate, but we can check. You can always check if you want, see how far off you are. I was really far off, looks like. So maybe I will correct that. Now this will be an underlay. Underlay just means it's my first drawing of the bunch. Okay. But it's really possible to draw anything you want if you just take your time. Maybe it's not a beach house. Or maybe it is. We'll see. We'll see how it finishes out here. But you can really draw anything you want if you just think about, in principle, yeah, maybe this is the beach or something. I don't know. But think about in a step-by-step way, okay, what am I trying to draw, and how do I represent this in a 2-point perspective, or at least, at the very least, a way that it would be familiar to people looking at it, okay? So a little bit here of architectural groundwork, and then I'm going to turn these layers off, and we will do our final drawing. Okay, so 2 points, drawing all the lines to those points, setting us up to finish our architectural drawing. All right, feel free to ask any questions, by the way. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm unfortunately unable to switch to Photoshop on my desktop, but the cool thing about Fresco, among many other cool things, is as I'm working, if I go back to my files here, it's saving everything so that I can upload, or I can access that file on my desktop. So if there's something special I want to do in Photoshop, I can access that on my desktop and place it in my scene. Okay, pretty easy, pretty handy. All right, so now that I have this underlay sketch, let's make a new layer. Oops, and we're going to use that technique of working light till you get it right. Remember, 2-point perspective, we have our edge here. Okay, in my drawing on the screen, this edge is represented by this corner. Okay, this corner here. So just imagine if I draw a new line here, let's use the default pencil right there, boom. It's actually really nice. So this edge right here is like the edge of my cube that you're looking at on the screen. Mind blown, right? So that is 2-point perspective. 3-point would be something like that. Or if you're looking, pardon me, up at a building, okay, you may have seen something like that as well, where the buildings, particularly the skyscraper, will have a bit of a tapered shape to you, or to it rather. Okay, so again, this file will be accessible. You can check it out, look at all the layers, and see what I'm doing here. Okay, so I have a new layer. I'm going to switch back to the fine liner. Let's go ahead and add it to my favorites because I'm going to be using it quite a bit, and make sure my lines are black. Now, if I tap on the layer, tap on my sliders, again, if you're just joining, the blue dot is simply where I'm tapping on the screen. Okay, you can turn that off if you're working in Fresco. Don't push me because I'm close to the edge. That's right. Okay, So back to our new layer here, and now I'm going to do something a little different. Let's go ahead and hide the layer panel. I should mention that when you do tap layer properties and you have that slide out, if you want to get rid of it, okay, just tap the slider again and it'll just go away. Fresco does have collaborative features as well, so if I want to collaborate, I can add people. I just have to share that link and people can actually comment on parts of your work. But since we're just getting started, we'll just focus on the basics today. All right, I'm going to reduce the size of this brush. I'm basically trying to create a brush that has a nice thin line. Okay, let's go with maybe 13 pixels or so. Yeah, that feels good. And we'll make our underlay even lighter. Let's go with 20% here. Okay, so you can barely see it on the screen. It's akin to taking tracing paper and putting tracing paper over another piece of paper and drawing, okay? So now I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to use like 2 or 3 lines per edge here, depending on the edge, right? And I'm intentionally adding a little bit of wiggle. But we already did the work, which is the important part, so I don't have to think about perspective, is it off, is it on, how am I doing here? I don't have to think about any of that because we already did that work, okay? So just like so. I do want to make sure I have a little bit of an overhang here, so I'm gonna truncate that line a bit, like so. Or who knows, maybe there is no overhang. How about we do, well, I'm not going to do textures yet. We'll wait on textures. Let's get the structure in first. All right, so anything I don't need to draw that in. Okay, get our little lines in. And now let's get our step here. Maybe this is the back, who knows? It's some part of a structure, okay? And we can just follow the lines that we did before. Super easy, no stress. Now, of course, the better you get at drawing in perspective, the less reliant you become on these tools. But I just want to show you guys how you can use something like a perspective underlay. And then, you know, if your underlay is too what's called tight, intentionally kind of wiggling these lines a little bit to help your drawing feel a little bit more loose. Okay. I like drawings that feel like a human did them. Always pleasant. All right, let's extend this planter box or whatever it is over a bit, like so. Just like that. I actually had the opportunity a few months ago to kind of show a landscape architect who was transitioning from pen and paper and marker sketching to more digital tools. I had a chance to show her Adobe Fresco, and it was really cool to see how her work changed by having access to things like live brushes, which we'll show you in just a sec here. Alright, so maybe I've got some nice glass facade or entry here. You can sketch this up. If you live in a glass house, don't throw stones, right? Now, if you wanted to, you could sketch the inside of the structure, perhaps imagine what's on the inside as well. Okay. If this roof was meant to intersect, perhaps we could have that texture come through. I'm trying to decide what I want to put inside here. Actually, maybe the house does extend back, so we could have some line going back to vanishing point, like so. And then we can just truncate. Let's go ahead, maybe sketch in some simple furniture like we did yesterday. Perhaps a lamp I think someone said add a lamp yesterday as well. Picture frame, just again, because it's further away from us, I don't have to have all the detail in here. All right, maybe I've got some person silhouette that I want to add, just hanging out in the house. For scale, we can add something like that. And now for context, right, we can add some plants. So I suppose if this is tropical, we're going to have some sort of tropical plants, or at least if it's near the water. So we can add some of those. Perhaps on the back here, I'm just going to do a section of the ground so it feels like a sketch without necessarily all the context of the background. All right, maybe just something like that. And let's turn off our underlay, and there is at least the beginnings of our quick perspective steps. Or sorry, house. Let's see. Baldoon says, I think there's a problem with the steps in perspective. They're not parallel. Okay, let's go ahead and check. Happy to check. Let's check our work. Certainly if you use a ruler, you'll be more accurate with things like this, but here we go. Let's check our perspective. Let's check our work, guys. So, is it Baldoon? Here's our vanishing point. Okay. And we are going out like so. Let's see. So. Okay, you're right. Looks like it's a little bit off. Just a touch. All right, just a touch off. Yeah, so just a touch right there and right there, but easy enough to fix. Thank you for pointing that out. Much appreciated. But yes, good call. Check your work. Absolutely. There. So we fixed our sketch now. Okay, so I can turn that off, and there we fixed our steps. All right. All right, guys. Now I want to show you how quickly it is, or quick it is rather, to add some color and just finish this up with one of my favorite ways to do this, and that is with live brushes. Okay, so live brushes are brushes that are built into Fresco that mimic real media. So we have oil brushes and we also have watercolor brushes. The watercolor brushes, as a designer, are some of my favorite for just quickly comping up designs or presentations and adding color or washes to whatever it is we're doing. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to start with this watercolor wash soft. Let's add some sky tone in. Okay, just a nice little blue here. I'm going to make this brush nice and big. Let's make a new layer, and as soon as I touch the brush to the layer, we're going to have a watercolor effect. Now, watch what happens when you zoom in and you start painting. Look at how the colors just flow. Okay, so I just want to make a nice wash there for the background. You could do this at the beginning or after if you want, but it's certainly so delightful how those colors blend. All right, now, and I neglected to add my roofing detail, so I'm going to go back. Actually, I've got my fine liner. Let's pick a black color here. I did want to make this wood underneath. Okay, so turn my guide back on that I created, and now let's add just some wood texture. Doesn't have to be perfect. I guess maybe the main ones will have the main lines come through. Okay, I'll have these main lines come through like so. I don't want to get yelled at, so I'm gonna make sure I get it right this time. All right, there we go. Oops. Okay, let's turn our underlay off and let's do a little cleanup here. I didn't realize how much time was flying, but thankfully the live brushes are super quick. Okay. So let's take some brown here now and continue to wash. You can do this on the same layer. You could do this on a separate layer if you want. Okay, but I'm just going to wash under here with some brown on the inside as well. Unlike real watercolor though, you can erase. So if you do make a mistake, we can erase, clean that up as needed, just like so. Real easy. Okay, this exterior wall, for example. And now I'm just going to take some gray from this brush. Let's make it a little bit smaller. And let's wash. Oops, I was on the wrong layer there. Just take this brush and let's wash the side. Let's get our concrete in right here. Get our steps. Okay, just like so. And let's see. We got some dirt in our planter, no doubt. I do want to show you one thing though. You can tap on the layer and hit dry layer so that now when you paint, you have a crisper area as opposed to not having the layer dry and the colors kind of blend into each other. Okay. Great question, Anthony. Fresco does not have a perspective tool right now, but yes, I can say that is something being looked at. But great question, thank you. All right, so let's add some brown here on the inside. Just keep it loose. This watercolor. All right, just nice and loose like that. Let's go ahead and add some green. Maybe it's not by the beach. Doesn't really matter right now. I mean, I'm gonna dream of being by the beach, but for now, let's just add some green to give this some placement. All right, remember colors closer to us are gonna be more saturated, so I might press a little heavier on the screen up close, up front, and have that just fade off, like so. And then on the inside, we can pick colors if we want. I think it'd be cool if there was like a nice bright orange wall or something on the inside. So I'm gonna have this wall be orange, maybe this one too. All right, but so relaxing, so fun to play with these live brushes for sure. And then the ground, how about we just take the same brown here from the top. And maybe a bit of perhaps light blue. It's a very colorful house. I suppose a bit mid-mod, you could say. A bit mid-mod here. Let's take this gray. I'm going to go a little darker gray, maybe deep blue here, just for this back section on the inside, and then fade to the front, okay, as we recede. Now, to add some structure, okay, to the front here, I'm going to take this hard round brush. Let's go, that feels about right, 26, 27 pixels, and I want to frame out this glass a little bit better. Okay. So we'll just frame that out, erase what we don't need. That'll add some structure to our drawing. All right, so those are some powerful approaches to, powerful, is that the right word? Or some approaches to perspective drawing that I've found helpful. And certainly with the power of live brushes, especially if you like to work with lines like myself, makes for just a delightful experience here as we kind of create this architectural concept. I guess that could be turf in the background, for example. But these washes are just a treat. Absolute treat to use. All right, maybe a little bit of texture as well. We can add that. I'm going to make a new layer. And let's go to, I have this little brush here. It's a pixel spray brush. Where'd you go? Or spatter brush. So I can go in here and let's add a little bit of texture. All right, a little bit of texture on this right here. Again, if you have favorite brushes that you love, syncing is super easy from Photoshop to Fresco. All you have to do is add to your Creative Cloud library and it is there. Alright, since this is under the overhang, I am going to make it a little bit darker. I'll just pick this gray, go back to my watercolor here, and now, oops, let's dry this layer actually, so we don't have that bleed. And now I'll just go ahead and make this a bit darker here. Since it's perhaps in the shadow. Alright, something like that. Okay. So of course you can add to, or add as much rather, detail as you want on something like this. Let's go ahead and use this detail watercolor brush for these plants up front, just so I can get a nice crisp stroke. That's a hard word to say. Crisp. Get a nice crisp stroke here for these plants, just like that. All right. And of course, as always, sign your work. All right. So that's going from quick, I guess my windows are a little bit off, I just realized, meaning not vertical, so I probably should fix those here. But that's going from just a quick sketch to finishing things up, right? I'll show you a little trick here with the eyes. Actually, let's go ahead and use the ruler. So this is one instance where I will use the Fresco ruler here. But when let's see, favorites, hard round, there we go. So sometimes if you want to correct something and you have a rough sketch, if you add something crisp and definitive next to it, it'll actually help just make it feel more accurate. So I can go back in to that sketch layer now that I'm correcting this, make some tweaks, just slight tweaks, but I have these nice lines. So here's a use for the Fresco ruler, as now I'm pretty much, you know, done with my main sketching, and I just needed to straighten up some things here. All right, so there's an example of where I might use a tool just to help out and clean things up. And like I said, now I can come in and erase a bit. Okay, guys, I've got to wrap up here. Hopefully you've had as much fun as I have getting started. I'd love to see your own creations, so be sure to share those in the Photoshop Discord if you have a chance. All right. Once again, files will be available using the Google Drive link that Tim posted in the chat. Yes, the live brushes are lit. Thank you so much for hanging out. I had a blast. Hope to see you guys again soon. Thumbs up. Remember, passion is the process, guys. Passion is the process. Love what you do what you love, and let's get creative. Hopefully, you've gotten started today, and I'll see you guys later. Just a side note, quick schedule hit. Up next, we have the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge with Jesus, photo compositing with Farrah Manley later, and Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge with Claudia coming up, and tons of other content, so be sure to check that out. All right, I'll see you guys. Thanks for getting started with me.